All right, everyone, we're going to get started. We'll have a few stragglers. Thank you all so much for coming and spending your part of your afternoon with us. Again, the front rows. Just like when we're in school. We get to university campus, we're not going to sit in front. It's not going to happen. I don't know. I have a few more people that will come and keep the mic on, even though I know I can talk. Anyway, the mic. Oh, sorry, Dr. Portnoy. Thank you. Thank you again for coming today. We're very excited to have Dr. Portnoy with us. We have been taking him on an extraordinary tour of the Valley. He was with us at the Bioinnovations Gateway, which some of you are familiar with. We toured Huntsman Cancer Institute, and he toured our NanoFab facility, which is here in the USTAR building. And I've been asked to say that the I-beam at the NanoFab is available for use by any company at a reduced rate. I'm sorry to tell you that I don't know what. For those of you who know what that is, I'm sure that's very exciting, and I apologize for not knowing that. Ian Harvey is also volunteered after this to take tours of the NanoFab, which Matt went on and walked in and said, man, if I'd had one of those when I was doing my graduate work, may have been a different outcome. It's pretty fabulous, and we're very excited to have it here. I'm just going to take a few minutes that you came here to hear Matt, and I just want to give you a little bit of the lay of the land. Again, my name is Mary Carden. I am the director of USTAR's SBIR STTR Assistance Center. Many of you are friends of the SSAC, and we thank you for being here. Some people are new to us, and we'd certainly like to get to know you. We help small companies navigate these arduous waters to get you to some free money that's going to help you with your research and development. We do that fairly well, we'd like to think. I'm going to go through a couple slides very quickly to let you know what we do. Matt today is going to concentrate on NIH. So the very first thing I want to say to you is there are 10 other agencies that participate in this, and all of them have different rules. Foundations are the same, but the rules are different. And so please come to us. Don't go to the National Science Foundation with a 6-page document. Don't go to the National Science Foundation with the same amount of money that you would for NIH. Don't go to the DOD with the same information you would for NSF. Let us help you to make sure that you can do that. And we have several companies here who are applying through multiple organizations. I want to recognize, I'm going to hold up just a bit. We're waiting for one more person to come in, and I'm going to do a few introductions for you. But tell me, if you can, and for our sake, how many of you have applied for SBIRs? Yay! Yay, and how many have won? Not bad. Not bad. Phase 2s? Christian. Christian just got his phase 2. Very good. Very nice. Utah has a very, very robust entrepreneurial spirit. We tend to work very hard to get what we want, as do many people, and it's very nice to have you here. So thank you so much. Again, these are non-equity position dollars, no loss of technology, no loss of intellectual property. We know this, no payback of funds, for R&D only, no lawyers, no marketing. Easy words. I try to use easy words, at least in the beginning, because it gets pretty complicated. A little bit about our history. 1,475 awards were given through 2014 to the state from 1983 on for $352 million, a good amount of money. You can see that Massachusetts got 208 in 1 year. We were formed through the governing authority of USTAR to help Utah small businesses attain a better win rate. And we believe that we're moving that needle. Our win rate is a little better than 25% nationally. It runs between 14 and 18, depending on where you're looking. We're above that in phase 1s. We're right on the bubble with national average of 40% in phase 2s. We started in 2008. Today, again, 25% or better win rate. I won't publish over 25% because I just get too nervous. But we help you. We almost double your chances of winning. And I think as importantly, we're going to guide you through the process so that you don't lose for a rookie mistake. We want to make sure that everything's filled out correctly. We want to make sure that you've registered correctly. We want to make sure that you're on point. We help you with documents all through. Briefly, $2.5 billion in this program that's growing as it is mandated by Congress, and that amount of money is increasing next year. SBIR program has 2.9% of extramural research dollars over 100 million. That encompasses 11 agencies. Last to the party was Homeland Security. After 9/11, their expenditures went up. They went over $100 million. They got to join the SBIR program because you're mandated. If you spend over $100 million, you get to give 2.9% to the SBIR program. As sister, when we say SBIR, we're speaking ubiquitously. We talk about STTR. It has a little bit of a different definition, but we help you to find the right home. If you spend over $1 billion, so there are 5 agencies that do that, and they participate in that. And that's going to go into, of course, the needs and directions of the NIH. But there are 11 agencies that participate. And again, please come to us so that we can explain the differences and help you enhance your proposal to meet the goals of the agency that you are applying to. Agriculture, commerce, defense, the biggest player, half the money is the DoD. No surprise, biggest spender. NIH, or the Department of Health and Human Services, National Science Foundation, come in second and third regularly, depending on their amount, but they're the big folks to deal with. Of course, the Department of Energy, very big, lots of money there. Homeland Security, Transportation, EPA, and NASA. I missed somebody, education. Again, research dollars. We're going to spend this on salary, fringe benefits. We're going to make sure that your replacement equipment is paid for, whatever you're doing in your experiments. Overhead, consultants, 33% of the budget, a little different for STTR. And profit. Very best part of any, if you've worked with us, you can answer this question. What can you spend your profit on? Anything. You can go to Jamaica, buy your spousal unit dinner, putting up with you. You can do anything you want with profit. That you can pay your lawyers with. That you can do marketing with. So we want you to be sure to include profit, which is generally up to 7%. No lawyers, no patents, no marketing, no computers, no construction, no lab creation. Travel is very tricky. The SBIR STTR Center is here to help you. What we do is we consult with you at no charge. Most of the things that we do are offered to you courtesy of the state of Utah. Your tax dollars at work for Utah businesses only. We do consultations. We do have one small service that we charge for, wherein every time a solicitation comes out, we're going to send you an email that says, solicitation's out, you've provided us with keywords, here's some things that are a topic of interest, here's some things that may match your company and technology, or there's nothing that matches you, but please take a look, and we send you the solicitation. We do that within a 7 business day period, so that you're on it and able to move forward, get in touch with your program manager. That's $75 a year. And a very good way to make sure that SBIR and STTR is part of your business plan. We help you with guidance, we help you with evaluation, we help you with editing, we help you with submission. You get to submit yourself, but we'll help you with that. We won't write your proposal, but we will edit it, and we're pretty good at telling a story, which is what we do within the SBIR STTR world. So we help you with all of these things. We're with you side by side. We get to know you and your family very well as we enter the final days of the SBIR process, wherein we have promised that we're going to submit 2 days early, and we're going to make that promise happen so that we don't lose sleep at the last day. Utah's SBIR STTR Assistance Program can help you in any way. And again, I'm going to pitch that we do help you with a stronger win rate. A little bit more about our consulting, which I'm going to skip over. We also offer seminars and workshops twice a month, a free workshop, one on Wednesdays, second Wednesday of the month, SBIR 101, and then again on Tuesday, the 4th Tuesday in the evening. How to write a winning proposal. We do phase 2s, we do accounting tips, and we sponsor experts. And of course, we provide our services across the state. So we're up in Logan, we're down visiting with the folks in St. George, Cedar City, making sure that we spread our message across the state and with very good results. That's a couple of nice wins have come out of Washington County. We're very pleased to report. I'd like Linda Correlius to stand. I think a lot of you know her, but Linda is right-hand person in helping with everything. She's the Associate Director of the SBIR Center, and I thank her for her help today. I want to take a minute. Now we have everybody in place and introduce Ivy Estabrook, who is the Executive Director of USTAR. It's the mothership of everything that we do. And Melanie, if I can have you raise your hand, Melanie Bowen from Senator Hatch's office, as well as the constituents whose name I don't know if the three of you would raise your hand. We appreciate the Senator and all the work that he does to help us through. So thank you all very much for coming here. And now, without further ado, but perhaps some technological challenges, as I tend to get, I want to introduce you to Dr. Portnoy, who has been so gracious to, thank you, I know you're all going, it's right to the left, it's to the left. So gracious to come out and spend some time with us. He flew in last night. We took him to the Red Iguana, which was delightful. I just want to say 30-minute wait on a Monday night. We went to the Annex. 20-minute wait on a Monday night. So we went to the right spot, which was just fabulous. And he's toured, of course, the Valley today. So we thank you very much for coming, and of course for the hard work that you do as the SBIR STTR Director. Fabulous program. And I will switch the mic off, and I thank you all again.
Thank you very much, Mary. Good afternoon, everyone. It's my pleasure to be here. My first visit to Utah, so I'm delighted to be here. I saw a lot of fantastic things today. Across the valley, some of the fantastic facilities and work that's going on. Slide that up just a little bit. Can you? Is it on? Can you hear in the back? Yeah. Thank you very much. So I'm just happy to be here to talk a little bit about the SBIR programs. And what I want to do is I'm going to try to cover a little something for everybody. And so some of you may be very familiar with some of the things I'm going to talk about. Some of you may not. So certainly we're going to cover some SBIR basics overall, some specifics about NIH, some of the new things we've been doing in the past 2 or 3 years, and talk a little bit about your program officer and the type of person that is and what they do and how they're really one of your most important resources at the NIH. And then tell you about, if you like what you see, you can come out and get 3 days of all of this in our annual conference. Yeah, that maybe just down lights one level, maybe, if that's possible. Mark, do you have lighting? Oh, I see, it's preset, so just hit that one. It's a little too dark. That's all the way dark. Let's see what number 1 does. Is that too dark? Nobody's going to fall asleep? All right. So these are the types of things I'm going to talk about today, and we're going to have plenty of time for questions, and I'm going to be meeting with some folks this afternoon afterwards. And if you need anything else, or you can't get a hold of me today afterwards, please feel free to call or contact me after the fact. I just want to draw your attention before I start to 2 items in your folder that I want to make sure you have, besides my slides, are this sheet is our one-pager, or one-page, 2-sided. This is all the basics of the program in one spot, and it very much mirrors something I'll show you in a minute on our website. And this is more important. This is our contact list, also on the website and updated in real time. This is the program managers at all of our institutes and centers, and the FDA, CDC, and ACF in the agency. These our information is at the very top from my office. But mostly when you come to us with your idea, we're going to ask what your idea is, and we're going to refer you to one or more of these folks, SBIR program experts around NIH and HHS, who will provide you very specific advice for your situation. All right, with that said, your number 1 point to find out everything you wanted to know about the NIH SBIR program but were afraid to ask will be our new website at sbir.nih.gov. And so this is something that we relaunched last year to make sure it was very user-friendly for the community. And so the blue panel on the left will take you to everything you really need to know. If you're a newcomer or you want to know an overview, if you click the red box on the left that says New to SBIR, it'll take you to our interactive infographic that will step you step by step from the beginning all the way through award management. And when you hover mouse over or click on those circles there, you get a pop-up with other information and links out to more information. So that's a new feature of our website that really gives you quite a bit of information. So that's the general thing. If you take nothing else away, go to the website, you'll learn everything. We also have webinars posted so you can see me talk over and over again if that's something that interests you. Wouldn't interest me that. So overview. And Mary covered this at the high level. This part I'm going to talk about right here is essentially the same for all 11 agencies. And then after that, we'll talk about some of the specifics at NIH. So as Mary said, we have two programs, SBIR and STTR, and they're currently 2.9% of our budget and 0.4% of our budget for STTR. We get a lot of acronyms, so they're going to be flying, but certainly stop me also with any questions if you need them. So the SBIR program is a small business set-aside program for R&D to develop technology. STTR is essentially the same program with the requirement to partner with a not-for-profit institution, typically a university. And these are, Mary, these are exactly from her slides as well. We give out grants and contracts from the government for this program. It's not a loan. We are strategically investing in your company. It's not a loan. There's no repayment, no debt service, no equity forfeiture, and no IP forfeiture. The government doesn't take a percentage stake in your company. We don't ask for royalties. We don't ask for IP. We ask for the good story. We want to know how you're doing, what your success story is. Do you have sales? Do you have licensing? Have you had a merger? Those are the types of things we want to know. And how has the SBIR program impacted you? That's all we ask in return. This is kind of the congressional goals of the program. The SBIR program was started 33 years ago now, in 1982. And these four bullets here are what Congress says the program is for, and we focus on all of these in the program. Part of what we do now, is in terms of the recent reauthorization, is we do a lot of outreach, more so than we did before, to make sure we are targeting underrepresented states that historically don't receive a lot of SBIR funding, called underrepresented states, women-owned businesses, minority or socially economically disadvantaged owned businesses. And I will talk about that a little bit later. But these are congressional programs, and as such, they're subject to reauthorization by Congress. Our current programs are reauthorized through 2017, and they were authorized about 3 years ago, so we're about halfway through, a little more than halfway through the current cycle. STTR was started 10 years later in 1992. And so this program is essentially identical in design and in purpose by Congress, with the key distinction being a partnership collaboration between a small business and a not-for-profit research institution. That happens, as I'll tell you in a moment, quite well in SBIR as well, but it's optional. But STTR mandates the partnership between essentially a university and a small business to support technology transfer from the university off the bench and into the marketplace. So as Mary mentioned, there are 11 agencies, and they are listed on the right-hand side. The five largest, Defense, HHS, Energy, National Science Foundation, and NASA, have both SBIR and STTR programs. The remaining 6 at the bottom have just SBIR programs because of the budget that Mary mentioned earlier. The fiscal 13 numbers for the agencies are on the right, the combination of both programs. This is a year and a half out of date because it's incredibly hard to get information out of these agencies because they have multi-year funding. I'll show you what our numbers are for the current fiscal year in a moment. But as you can see on the pie chart, as Mary said, DoD is approximately half of the program. NIH is about 25 to 30% of the program. And so the other top 3 agencies represent around 10%, and you can see the top 5 agencies represent about 95% of the program by dollars. And these remaining entities are in here. But that said, they have important topics, and if you're in the right technology space, it is well worth it to apply to any of the agencies that fits your technology space. And in fact, there may be cases where there might be overlap. It might be that NIH and NSF or NIH and DoD have a similar interest in a certain type of technology, and you can apply to these agencies with the same project, just not within an agency. This is kind of the nuts and bolts structure of the program. Since practically everybody raised their hand, practically everybody probably understands this, but it is a phased research program. And I'll talk about all the exceptions as we go along in some of our new programs, but it starts off with a small feasibility study, phase 1, 6 months to 1 year, about $150,000 to $200,000 total costs, direct costs, indirect costs, or F&A and your fee. And these tend to be pilot studies for generating preliminary data or continuing some preliminary data studies. From there, you apply with phase 1 awardees, apply for phase 2. Phase 2 is a full R&D effort, $1 million, $1.5 million, 2 years. This is where you're going to be working on prototyping, technology scale-up, more data, things like that. NIH does have a second sequential phase 2, so if you get a phase 1, you could potentially apply, if you get a phase 2 at NIH, you could potentially apply for another phase 2. We call that phase 2B. How many folks have heard of NSF's phase 2B? This is nothing like that. So phase 2B is a catchphrase that some of us use, and our phase 2B is different from NSF's. It goes to Mary's earlier point in that at certain points, while certain things are the same in the program, certain things are different. So our phase 2B is a second full phase 2. Up to 3 years, $1 million per year, so up to $3 million, typically for types of technology that need to go to FDA and require more money, things that require clinical trials or advanced animal and human studies. I do want to make a note, it's called phase 1 and 2 and 3. This is not related to human clinical trial phases of study. However, we can fund human clinical trials in SBIR. So we may fund a phase 1 or 2 clinical trial in a phase 2 SBIR, but those are just two different uses of the same type of phrase. So that's phase 2. Phase 3 is called the commercialization phase. This is the magical phase that things happen and all of a sudden your technology is on the market. As we know, a lot of things have to happen, and it's usually for life science technology, many millions of dollars, if not more, and many years past the end of phase 2 that are still required to get onto market, depending on the technology. Phase 3, the government is not allowed to spend SBIR dollars or STTR dollars to fund it. This is typically for NIH, where you're going to need to look for venture capital, angel investing, strategic partnership with a pharma company, medical device company, etc. And if you're familiar with other agencies, NIH is not going to be the customer, the primary customer of your technology. Department of Defense SBIR, you're going to develop a sensor or a new part of a weapon system, and then Department of Defense is typically going to be customer number 1 and buy in bulk for the government, put that into the field for the warfighter. Or they could connect the small business to a large defense prime to work on part of a system, and through that. The NIH doesn't operate that way. We want our technology to get into the open marketplace, and so we're not going to be the primary customer. So NIH doesn't provide typically phase 3 funding. This is where you need to think very early on, where is my future money going to come from? And in fact, SBIR and STTR funding should just be a part of a funding strategy for any small business. It shouldn't necessarily be perceived as the end-all be-all, because of course these awards take a little time to get, and they provide a limited amount of funding and not necessarily enough to run a whole company forever. But that's the phased nature of the program. So the eligibility criteria are something that has changed in recent years, has been adjusted in the Reauthorization Act. And this is where companies tend to stumble and have the most confusion. And this is where we tend to find companies who get a very, very good score fall off pre-award when we do pre-award checks. They might not be eligible in the end. You don't have to be eligible to apply. A company has to be, you don't have to be eligible to apply. You do need to be eligible at the time of award. That is also the same across agencies. These eligibility criteria come from the SBA, Small Business Administration, who has an oversight role of the entire SBIR program, and they put out what are called size rules for SBIR eligibility. Size, in this case, refers to more than just the number of employees, although it does include the number of employees. So first and foremost, of course, we're talking about for-profit small businesses. not-for-profits are not eligible to apply, although they can partner. Small, meaning 500 or fewer employees, including all affiliates. The vast, vast majority of our companies are very small, 10 to 20 employees. At least half of our companies are 10 to 20 employees. Many of our companies are less than 10, and we have companies with 1, 2, or 3 employees that apply and are successful in receiving SBIR funding. Around 1/3 of our applicants and awardees each and every year are new to NIH, so they've never applied before, and they get funding for the first time every year. So there is lots of money. So employee number. Work must be done in the United States with very, very few exceptions. Underlying all of this is that it's a congressional program. And so Congress wants money to be spent here for us, for the United States. So you can potentially partner and collaborate with a foreign institution, a foreign company, a foreign university, under rare circumstances where there might be a reagent or a patient population that is not available here in the U.S. But that's it. The vast majority of the time, it's all going to be spent here. Ownership. So this is where most companies stumble. It's become much more complicated, and but it's not that bad. Most everybody falls in. Most of our companies, the vast majority, fall into the first bullet here. SBIR companies must be greater than 50% U.S. owned and operated by individuals who are U.S. citizens or permanent residents. That's a lot to say. I want to say it again. Majority owned by individuals who are U.S. residents or U.S. citizens or permanent residents. And so that does a couple of things. It precludes majority foreign ownership by foreign corporations. I get that question occasionally. Or a subsidiary of a foreign entity that may be existing wholly here in the U.S. but is owned by a foreign company is not eligible. Owned by a single large corporation, but here in the U.S., possibly not eligible. There's the second bullet here. So the vast majority fall under here, owned by individuals who are citizens or permanent residents. It's your typical startup, spun out of a university or started by an entrepreneur. The second bullet here is much smaller. That eligible small business could be majority owned by other small businesses that are themselves majority owned by U.S. citizens or permanent residents. So an SBIR company could be owned by one or more other SBIR eligible companies, but only at this level right here. If one of these companies is owned by a not-for-profit, then that whole thing falls apart and it's not eligible. So there's the second tier. And not too many companies fall into that, but it is there. And the last tier is new. This came in because of the Reauthorization Act. This is the so-called VC rule, if you've heard of it. An eligible small business could be majority owned, more than 50%, by multiple venture capital operating companies, hedge funds, private equity firms, or any combination of these. We just typically say VC. So majority owned by multiple, 2 or more VC companies. A single VC owning the majority of the small business is not, that small business is not eligible. Unless that VC happens to be U.S. owned and operated by individuals who are citizens or permanent residents. So it becomes very complicated very quickly. Vast majority of companies are this, so you don't really need to worry about it too much. This is now open to NIH and CDC. The VC rule, we had to opt in. And I know there are folks who are concerned that, well, why should the VC companies come in? If they've got all that VC money, why should they come in and take, these SBIR awards? The volume of VC-owned small businesses is very low. We've made a handful of awards versus the well over 1,200, 1,300 awards we've made otherwise. So it's open, it's there, but folks who are concerned about being crowded out shouldn't be concerned. The vast majority of our companies fall under the main bullet here. Eligibility is always at time of award. So you may have a company that has some ownership things that are being worked out, and if they're worked out by time of award and they can certify at time of award, then it's okay. In fact, companies, before they receive a grant from any agency or contract, will have to certify a bunch of things, signing under penalty of lying to the government and things like that, like your tax return. All of these points are on that checklist. That's the SBIR eligibility. I'll say also this VC piece is only specific to SBIR. It's not available in STTR because Congress wrote it that way. So that's SBIR. STTR follows basically most of the same rules. Applicant is a small business, and it follows all of this except for that last piece on the VC. So the ownership has to be there, the employees, the U.S. work. As I said earlier, STTR requires a formal cooperative effort between a small business and a not-for-profit research institution, whereby the small business must do a minimum of 40% of the work, get 40% of the budget, in company-owned facilities with company employees. The research institution must do a minimum of 30% in its facilities with its personnel. I'm dealing with some issues right now as we speak with some folks emailing me about questions about this 40-30 split and what it means. But these are very much in stone and non-editable, non-waivable. So those are the minimums required by law. The remaining 30% is kind of up for grabs. It could go to one, it could go to the other, it could be split any way they see fit, or it could go to a third party, another business, another university, etc. U.S. research institution, not-for-profit, is typically a college or university, but it may be another not-for-profit type of entity. It might be a federal laboratory also. Those are allowed as well. And this requires that the two main entities negotiate an intellectual property agreement amongst themselves so they are clear as to what they're going to be doing. The government, NIH, doesn't get involved in that IP negotiation or agreement. We do provide the model agreements that could be used, but this is a lawyer thing. And so one of the main questions we get, and perhaps one of the main questions Mary gets, is SBIR, STTR. I don't really know which one to apply for. I know one has a lot of money, one has a little money. What's the differences? There's only two differences in reality, aside from the funding pool. And it's about partnering and the principal investigator, or PI. And they're shown on this slide. So SBIR permits partnering, and phase 1 SBIR can outsource up to 1/3 in phase 1 and half in phase 2 to another entity. It doesn't need to be a not-for-profit. Could be another company, could be a university, could be an animal laboratory, could be consultants. STTR requires a partner at the 40-30 split I mentioned before. That's the one, the work split. So sometimes that will dictate which way you need to go. If you have a lot of university involvement, that's going to be over this 1/3. You may need to go for SBIR, STTR. The other is the PI, the principal investigator. SBIR, the PI must have primary employment, greater than 50% appointment at the small business at the time of award. This is not related to the effort on the grant. We get this question a lot. But does that mean the PI has to have 51% effort on the grant? No. They have to have a greater than 50% appointment at the company. They could have 10 or 20 or 30% effort on the grant. But it's the appointment at the company. That precludes full-time employment at another organization. What this essentially means is that full-time university professors who like their day jobs and like their benefits can't be the PI on an SBIR unless they want to go part-time at the university. In those cases, we do have STTR, where the PI can be either from the research institution or from the small business. And they have to have a primary employment at one or the other, depending on where they are. So the award, though, is always made to the small business, even in the case where it's STTR and the university does 60% of the work, which it can do the minimum 30, and it can do the remaining 30, and the PI could be from the university. Even in that case, the award is still made to the small business. They have the applicant, they have the awardee, the university, and the PI receive funding through a subcontract, even though it's a big subcontract. So those are the basics of the differences. So in some cases, where the PI is and how much work the university needs to do kind of tells you which program might be best for you. And I'll show you the success rates in a little bit so you can see how they compare to each other. So as I mentioned, eligibility is determined at time of award. The PI is not required to have a PhD, MD, bachelor's degree, master's degree, or any degree in any program for that matter. Of course, they do have to demonstrate in a biosketch that they and the team can do the work and have the background necessary to accomplish the tasks at hand. You can submit essentially identical projects to different agencies. So you can submit to NIH and you can submit to NSF, essentially the same project. On each application, you're going to have to check a box saying, I'm doing that, and in the end, should you be so fortunate as to be offered both awards or do well, you have to take one and decline the other, because we will not fund duplicate projects, and all of this is part of the program. But you cannot submit the same project within NIH to do different parts of NIH. So you may have a project that overlaps the Cancer Institute and the Diabetes Institute. You cannot submit the same project to both of them. You have to submit, and you can get dual assignments, but you cannot submit the same thing twice. So that's the general overview, and most of what I just said more or less goes depending on the agency. The VC rule differs. Only NIH, CDC, and part of Department of Energy have opted to allow VC companies, but the rest is basically the same. So now to NIH, and I've got also some CDC specifics as well, since we're all part of HHS. So as Mary alluded to earlier, HHS is actually the high-level departmental agency that NIH is part of. Other components of HHS that have SBIR programs are the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. I'm going to come back to this in a moment. The Food and Drug Administration and the Administration on Children and Families, and the amounts are shown here. You can see that NIH is around 98% by dollars of the SBIR program. So folks tend to think of it as the NIH SBIR program, but I spend a lot of time explaining it's the HHS SBIR program. We're a lot of it, and we're the 800-pound gorilla, but we want to make sure we talk about our sister agencies. The ACL, we have a new agency as of this year in the HHS SBIR program. ACL is the Administration on Community Living, and by the, I can't remember the name of the act now. So basically, by a law Congress signed last summer, a part of the Department of Education called NIDR, N-I-D-R-R, National Institute on Disability and Rehabilitation Research, was transferred from the Department of Education to the Department of Health and Human Services and into ACL. It got a new name, NIDLR, and it's the, I can't even remember what the L stands for. It'll be on their slide, but we'll get to that in a minute. What they brought with them was they brought a $100 million research program, and with it a $3 million SBIR program. So that Department of Education's SBIR program shrunk a little bit, and that's a very small program if you saw the first slide. And ours grew a little bit by the addition of ACL. And they are not on our current solicitations. They're doing their own thing with separate solicitations until we work out how they're going to integrate. So this is part of the SBIR program. NIH currently is the only part of HHS that has an STTR program. It's possible that other components of HHS may sign on to STTR in the near future. We'll see how that goes. So I'm going to pretend that my name is Sean Griffiths for a minute. And I'm going to give you 2 minutes on CDC. Most of the talk's on NIH, but I do want to talk about CDC. They're in the news a lot lately for all of the things going on around the world with Ebola and infectious disease. So this is just what they're interested in. All of this is usually in our solicitation. Their mission is to work around the clock to protect us from health and safety and security effects, both here and abroad. They do research and they conduct critical science in all of these areas, and they're part of HHS. CDC is built like NIH with institutes and centers. So they have different parts of their agency like we do. They put out about 40 SBIR topics a year, plus they accept omnibus grant solicitations in our omnibus. They make around 25 phase 1s and 5 to 6 phase 2s a year. Because their agency overall budget size is so small at 7 or 8 million, they tend to stick to the budget limits so they can make more awards. And they do participate in our contract solicitation, and right now they're around 60% grants and 40% contracts. And of course, they do a lot of different things in the public health arena. These are their strategic priorities. You can take a look at these. But these are the things they're interested in supporting SBIR topics on. They have what they call winnable battles, things they think if they put a lot of effort and funding into it, they can hopefully make some headway. These are their current 6 fundable, winnable public health battles, and nearly all of their topics are around one or more of these areas. And of course, you can see there is a certain amount of overlap with things that NIH does as well, and that's okay. Overlap is good if you're an applicant. It means if somebody can't fund something, somebody else might be able to fund the same thing. And that's really important for you. You don't get that too much with other agencies. We use dual assignments for this. And so my counterpart in CDC, who is based in Atlanta, of course, is Sean David Griffiths. This is his contact information. His information is on the sheet that you have and on our website and is listed in our omnibus solicitation. And so NIDLR, the National Institute on Disability, Independent Living, and Rehabilitation Research. Congress comes up with these acronyms, usually not us. They are now a part of the Administration for Community Living in HHS. Their mission is to generate new knowledge and promote its use to improve the abilities of individuals with disabilities to perform activities of their choice in the community and to expand society's capacity, provide full opportunities and accommodations for its citizens with disabilities. There is overlap, of course, with NIH. Many institutes, particularly the National Institute of Child Health and Human Development, but others as well. And so we have overlap now with this part of HHS. Most of their grants are cross-domain, multidisciplinary, age-independent, from children and youth to the elderly. And Brian Bard is the program manager, my counterpart at the ACL. He is currently in transition. He has an HHS email address and a Department of Education phone number, and they are moving buildings down in DC this summer to move closer to be part of HHS. So they are literally in this fiscal year transitioning from one agency to the other. Not a inconsequential thing to move an entire agency across the street. So their focus of their SBIR program is to help small businesses provide products that improve the lives of persons with disabilities. They have this current year, fiscal 15, around $3.6 million. The link in this goes to their solicitation, and if they haven't, Mary, you could certainly provide an electronic copy of my slides to everyone, certainly. Because of their size, they tend to do smaller things so they can do more. So they make around 6 small phase 1s a year. 10 small phase 1s a year. This is about half the guideline. And they make 5 or 6 very small phase 2s. If they gave $1 million phase 2, they'd be out of money very quickly. So they choose to spend their money a little bit broader. And so these links provide information to their past awardees. So you can certainly take a look at that and see if it's something that you're interested in. And they do have their phase 1 solicitation open right now. It ends May 12th, and these 2 links will take you to their solicitation. It's unlike the NIH. It uses grants.gov, but has unique requirements. So, but it's certainly something to take a look at if you're in that space. Now on to NIH. So NIH mission, as most folks know, is to improve public health. And that's our overall mission statement. I highlighted the part in blue that is of most relevance to the SBIR STTR program, the application of this knowledge. SBIR and STTR are the ultimate of applied science. It's product driven. So when folks call me and they have this great idea for a basic research or a resource, my first question is, what's the product? The program is focused on developing widgets and products for commercialization. That may be a service, that may be an IT health app, but it is ultimately something that can be commercialized. NIH is, as you may know, broken into 27 pieces. We call them institutes and centers, ICs for short. My office, coordination office, resides in the office of the director. 24 of the 27 institutes have SBIR STTR funding, and they're shown here. We will typically refer you to one or more of these institutes when you come in. We ask you to just send us a little bit about your technology, and we'll get you to one of the program managers or more on that sheet I gave you to give some very specific advice. And there is overlap. You can certainly check out their websites, but it's usually pretty easy to figure out where technology goes. You can almost do it on the title of the institute alone in terms of where your fit is going to be within NIH. This fiscal year, and so you've seen some slides, you saw the 13 money on the earlier slide. This is the 15 money. We're at 2.9% and 0.4%. NIH is $786 million. If you remember, back on the early slide with all the agencies, it said $698 million for NIH in fiscal 13. And so this is nearly $100 million more now in fiscal 15 due to budget restoration from some interesting cuts we had in fiscal 13. And also the percentage of the program goes up every year. It was 2.7, 2.8, 2.9. And so these numbers go up. Among the 24 institutes and centers, the budget is divided proportionally based on their congressional line item budget. NCI, National Cancer Institute, is a $5 billion NIH institute. They get 2.9% of that budget set aside for SBIR, 0.4 for STTR, not the whole part, just the extramural part. That amounts to around $115 million program for NCI. And so these go around the pie chart. We have large institutes, medium institutes, small institutes. The red sliver at 12 o'clock noon is the National Library of Medicine. Their SBIR program, STTR, is around $1 million, maybe a little less. So we do have a 2 order of magnitude difference within NIH about the size of our programs, and these are set by their own budgets. Just because an institute is medium or small doesn't necessarily mean their success rate within that institute is any worse than large institutes. The funding rate, I'm going to show you the next slide, going to be the overall NIH funding rates. But the funding rate at any of these institutes depends on the volume of applications they get, how well they do in peer review, and their available budget. As you can imagine, we receive a lot of cancer applications. So they're the largest institute, but they also get the highest volume of applications. And so their success rate tends to be a little lower than average because of the volume. And so just the point is, don't be discouraged from applying to an institute around here because they're small. They all do really good things with their budget and want to help you and will find money if they can to fund you if they're interested. So here are the success rates. This is the past 2 years, 2013 and 2014. Keep in mind, 2013 was the year of the Budget Control Act, affectionately known as sequestration, where we took a 5% cut in our budget. So everything went down in 2013, and most of it came back in 14. Most folks want to know about phase 1. That's the point most folks come into the system. Phase 1 success rates are around 13% for SBIR, 18-19% for STTR. In 13, and then 18% in fiscal 14, and around 20%. So you can see some recovery due to the restoration of our budget. You can also, interestingly, see STTR tends to be a little bit higher success rate than SBIR, despite the fact that it's a much smaller program by overall budget, around 1/9 the size. And that's just a volume issue. We get much lower volume of applications in STTR. Phase 2 success rate, and these are the NIH averages. These align pretty well with national averages, so the combination of success rates from all the 11 agencies is around 15 to 20% for phase 1. Phase 2 success rates are around 40%, a little bit lower in the year where we had cuts, but around 40%. That's very striking when you first look at it, but it is the key to remember that the phase 2 applicant pool is phase 1 awardees. So only phase 1 awardees can apply for phase 2. And so the success rate tends to be around 40%. And again, these numbers hold across the 11 agencies, 35, 40, 50% depending. Fast track is a combination mechanism I'll discuss a little bit later. This is a combination phase 1 and 2 where you're applying for both at the same time. It undergoes simultaneous peer review and then we make the award. Those tend to track with phase 1 success rates shown here. This is a real dip, but you'll see in a moment that that's because the N is very small. You make a handful of STTR fast tracks a year across the whole agency. But these are the success rates. And these tend to track relatively well when you compare it to the NIH RPG average or R1 average. This actually is a little bit better overall than the R1 average. So this is the slide where all the data came from. All of this information is publicly available online at NIH Reporter. Raise your hand if you've heard of NIH Reporter or Project Reporter, where all of your abstracts go when you get an award. Who's heard of the CRISP? CRISP? So Reporter is the new CRISP. So everybody's award goes into a database, the abstract and the dollar amount, not your application. And so all of the success rate information is publicly available. And what's not shown on here is we have a state-by-state breakout of SBIR as well. So you can see Utah's, this is what Mary was talking about, Utah's averages over the past 10 years. But these are the 13 and 14 numbers. Note that we get a pretty high volume of applications, 5,000 to 6,000 applications per year, all phases, all programs, make around 1,200 awards. Overall success rate, everything combined is around 21%. That's a little bit higher than the NIH average for R1s and things like that. And so you can see that the volume is in phase one, about 3,600 SBIR phase one applications, around 600 to 700 awards. Here's STTR, you can see the volume, because the program is smaller, is much less. And here's that anomalous fast track number, the 8%. We had 60 applications and 5 STTR awards compared to the prior year. It's just a low number. It fluctuates from year to year. But it's all that said, it's a very competitive program, obviously. There's no, it may be free money, but it's not free. You have to work for it. And it is competitive. And so if you're wondering why do these numbers, why does this number not equal $600 or $700 million, this is just new awards. So we fund 1 year at a time, so the other $300 million is in the second year and third year of phase twos typically, that we fund year by year. So that's the basic overview of NIH and our success rates and how we administer the program. Now, how do you find the money? Where are the solicitations? So we have a funding page on our website that lists all of our solicitations. It'll list our omnibus, it'll list other targeted RFAs and PAs and SBIR solicitations we issue. We have around 80 to 90 on the that's going to improve public health as long as it's in our life science mission space. And so if you don't see a topic, you can still apply for your technology. And you will not be disadvantaged for not applying to a topic when you come into the omnibus. We issue RFAs and other things that have very specific topics. You need to be very, very responsive to those. But the omnibus is free reign. We certainly encourage you to talk to a program officer to talk about your project, no matter what. Even if you identify the topic and you say, wow, that bullet or that paragraph really hits exactly what my company is doing, you still should talk to a program officer about your project. Make sure it fits, talk about the budget, other things, SBIR, STTR, best solicitation, but we really want the best. We don't know, and we wouldn't presume to know, where the next great invention or next great technology is going to come from. So we want to hear it from the community. So in addition to our 2 omnibus, we issue many targeted SBIR, STTR solicitations. We call them program announcements, PARs, RFAs. All of these are flavors of solicitations. And this might be one or more institutes might be issuing them. They're going to be high priority areas for their institute that they want to emphasize over and above the omnibus. They might have a different due date. They may have a custom due date. There might be an RFA that's open, has one due date 60 days later, and closes. Or it might be a PA that's open for 3 due dates per year times 3 years. It varies. But there might be different review criteria, different amounts of money available. Some of these SBIR RFAs will have money set aside, saying we will make 5 awards at $200,000 per phase 1. So there is the competition is a little bit smaller in scope. You're competing against folks who are applied in that RFA, not the whole SBIR pool. It might have varying project periods. The point is that we publish many solicitations, and another question we get is, well, I found this RFA, but I don't know whether to apply for this RFA or the omnibus. You know, I could see either, and that's a good discussion to have with the program officer. What's the right solicitation for me? How many of you, well, raise again your hand, how many of you applied for SBIR, STTR? Keep your hands up if you enjoyed it. Or you thought registering in all of these systems was fun, or that you tried to do it at the last minute and you got stuck because SAM was hanging forever and it took weeks to get through SAM. The unfortunate reality is small businesses don't have grants offices, don't have sponsored projects offices, and universities hire one-to-many folks whose sole job it is to submit applications for a living and help you out in that. When it's you and your small business, that's you. On your computer, and I'm going to say this, but it's not funny, at 4:45 p.m. on the day of the deadline, pushing the button and hoping you don't get errors. And so it's challenging, it takes lots of time, and starting early is key. So you have to be registered in all of these systems, and some of them are dependent on one another. You have to have a company formed, have an IRS number to get a DUNS number. You have to have a DUNS number to register in SAM. You have to register in SAM to register in grants.gov. You can register in grants.gov and ERA Commons simultaneously in parallel. That's good. SBA registry, you only need a DUNS number, so you can do that in the beginning. But we recommend it takes 6 to 8 weeks to register in all of these systems. So you have to, if you're a new company, you've never applied before, you need to think at least 2 months before the deadline you're planning on to start this process. We have resources to help you. The most important resource is the ERA Commons Help Desk, who can, despite the fact that the ERA Commons Help Desk is an NIH help desk, they can help you with all of this. And in fact, they can help you probably better than the help desks of some of these other places, I'm going to frankly say. And we just last week brought them breakfast and orange juice and coffee to thank them for the April 5th deadline, because the Commons Help Desk gets around 3 times the call volume on SBIR day than it does on R01 day or R21 day. And we get a lot more R01s. I mean, we get 6,000 SBIRs a year, we get 20,000 R01s a year, but they're all coming in from universities who either have grant offices doing it, or sophisticated places have developed system-to-system programs that directly submit to NIH. It's small business, it's you in your computer pushing buttons. And the last thing you definitely don't want to do is push, submit, and go away, go on vacation, go to Hawaii. You want to make sure that your application gets an error-free. You want to check the Commons for errors and try to clean them up. Because what happens is, when everybody the submission curve looks like this as it approaches 5 p.m. And in some cases, we get street right now. All of these are cross-posted in SBA's central website, SBIR.gov, which just relaunched with a new face yesterday. But our funding website's here, and we talk about all these types of solicitations. So, most folks, around 70% of our applications and awards come into our omnibus solicitation, our parent solicitations. We have one for SBIR and one for STTR. We just passed the last main due date for these on April 5th. We have one more AIDS date. If you happen to be working on AIDS applications, that's May 7th. And then we are currently working on a new omnibus for the coming year that will be issued in June. We have recently put out guidance that we, in an effort to be more responsive to the small business community and shorten our award timelines from the 9 to 10 month average, we've rearranged our due dates and our cycles and made we're making other enhancements under the hood with staff and efficiencies to basically, from receipt to award, shorten our time. And so because of that, we are changing our due date cycles. The new due dates will be September 5th, January 5th, and April 5th. April 5th was an old due date, but now it's the end of the cycle instead of the beginning of the cycle to try to shorten that up at the end of the fiscal year. This is also an attempt to get around the lag in budgets we get every year from Congress. So we typically do not get a budget October 1, surprisingly. We get a budget in December, January, February, March, and so we are, understandably, we can't make too many awards when we don't know how much money we have, and so we aligned these due dates to when the first applications get up for funding. Most of the time we're going to have a budget from Congress, unless it's something really crazy, but we can hit the ground running and make awards without delay. A part of this is we're no longer going to have separate AIDS due dates. So they'll all come in under these 3 dates. All of these are very expedited dates anyway. So it's just, now instead of 6 dates per year, you only have to remember 3. So that's our omnibus. Around 70% of our awards come in. Around 90 to 95% of all of our awards are in grants. But we do issue a contract solicitation. We're the only agency that does both contracts and grants in SBIR. And we have a once-a-year contract solicitation that comes out with around 5 or 6 of our institutes and the CDC with very prescribed topics, very detail-oriented, with deliverables to the government kind of contracts. That's actually, we're going to slide this up a little bit to shorten that cycle as well. That'll probably come out in July with a due date in October. Slide it up by about a month this year. And that's a very different looking solicitation. It's a very different process. And so we want to take a look at that very carefully. How many folks have heard of the NIH Guide for Grants and Contracts? Wow, that's not enough. One of the things I would like everybody to do is to sign up, and I'll give you the list at the end. Sign up for this list here. Every Friday, NIH issues solicitations every day. Every Friday, we put out a once-a-week email that typically goes to the academic community or anybody who's signed up for the NIH Guide that lists every single solicitation NIH has issued in the past week. It also lists all the policy updates that we issue in the past week. In any given week, there may or may not be an SBIR or an STTR solicitation, but if there is, you don't want to miss it, because they tend to have 60 to 90 day timelines before the first due date. And so you want to give yourself plenty of time. And so you definitely want to sign up to receive this once a week email. And if you don't like it, you can unsubscribe. But it's going to tell you everything that NIH is publishing in the past week in terms of funding opportunities. This tends to go to department heads and departmental secretaries, and they tend to redistribute it internally. But there's no reason you can't sign up for it as well and get the information firsthand right when it comes out. It typically comes out between 2 to 4 o'clock Friday afternoon. So I talked about this already. We had, it's a little new at this point, we adjusted our due dates, and so for that reason we extended our omnibus solicitations by one due date. That date has passed. They will expire after the current due date, and we will be adjusting our timing to coincide with our new funding cycles. We accept anything in the life sciences that can improve public health. And I want to state that again. You don't have to apply to a specific topic to apply to NIH, like you do at many other agencies. We have, just like R01s and other mechanisms, SBIR and STTR is investigator initiated. We put out a 150-page topics document with our omnibus that has 1 to 20 pages for every institute listing things they're interested in. And it may be in any and all of these areas. But we will accept anything that, any technology, significance, investigative, innovation, approach, and environment. We put a commercial twist on some of these with a little bit of extra language, especially in phase 2. And these use the same scoring system. 1 to 9, 1 is the best, 9 is the worst. It all averages together in the end and multiplied by 10, so your priority scores are 10 to 90. 10 is the best, 90 is the worst. If you've never dealt with it before, I know most folks have, but it's incredibly confusing because 100 is not good. You can't get 100. You used to, and 100 used to be the best, but 10 to 90. 10 is the best, 90 is the worst. If you're doing human subjects research, you need to be careful to address that properly, even if you're going to be subbing out some of that work to another group, and address the inclusion of women, minorities, and children in that human subjects research. Vertebrate animal research and biohazards all have to be addressed. We have a lot of very, small business owners and entrepreneurs are very typically cavalier anyway. So drawing your own blood to do a little test is human subjects research. Or having your spouse who's a nurse or a doctor do it for you, that's human subjects research. So it requires addressing everything we need to address. This is the timelines that we currently have that we're working to shrink. This uses our new timelines. So we have September 5th coming up, goes to peer review in October, November, council in January, February, funding in March, and that's fixed in stone, but we're working to shrink some of that up so that these timelines come down. The key thing is, this used to be delayed way into the following year. We're hoping to make most of these awards by the end of the same calendar year, not the following calendar year. So these are our overall timelines. So that's peer review. So tips for success. And I would say this slide will work no matter what agency you apply to, no matter whether you're applying for an R01, an SBIR, conference grant, or anything. But it's about making sure you kind of address a bunch of these things all together. No significance. I know that each and every single one of the 80,000 applications NIH gets and the 6,000 SBIR application gets is the absolute best technology or best ideas since sliced bread. But the key is you have to make a case in your application to the study section that where does your technology fit within the framework of what's out there? How is what your innovation going to be game-changing or significantly fill a niche, a gap that's missing a solution? What's the solution? What's the problem that you have a solution for? Not providing a good test of feasibility in phase 1. In phase 1, you have to set your aims, you have to set your milestones. And we're typically looking for very quantitative milestones in phase 1 so that the panel can see when you apply for phase 2. In phase 1, they said they do this, and they've clearly done it. And so therefore, at least the feasibility is there, and we can, feel good about that for phase 2. Lack of innovation. Innovation is the funny word. It's in most cases in the eye of the reviewer. It might be an innovative technology, innovative approach, innovative solution. It might be so new that it's innovative idea is innovative of itself. But you have to discover and determine how you're going to address innovation. Not writing a good research plan. This comes with time and volume. Writing grants is an art as much as it is a science, and the goal of your research plan, which is short, it's 6 pages in phase 1 and 12 in phase 2, is telling a story. You have to tell a very convincing story with a beginning, middle, and an end that rises to a crescendo that's going to leave the reviewers with the feeling after they've read a good book, wow, this is fantastic, I can't believe, we have to, this is very good work, we have to fund it. Reviewers don't make funding decisions, but we want to give it a good score because it really speaks to them. Not considering alternatives and pitfalls. This is very big in R01 research, but it's just as relevant in SBIR research. So if plan A doesn't work, what's plan B? What's plan C? What's plan D? So you have to consider all of that. The same difference here, lack of experience with methodologies or unfamiliarity with published work or technology on the market. We have, unfortunately, folks who are trying to propose solutions to problems that already have pretty adequate solutions, and theirs isn't any different than anything else. So what's in the space? What's in the space out there on the market that you're trying to either beat or be different of to differentiate your technology? And then, as always, proposing too little or too much work for the budget. There's only so much you can do on $150,000 in 6 months worth of time. And so you have to make sure you scope the work appropriately. Some of the keys are understanding who we are, who we are, what we're trying to do, and why we do it. And that's understanding our mission. And the folks who work at NIH are very much firm believers in what we're around 2,000, 2,500 applications per round. We've had cases where we've seen 1,000 to 2,000 applications come in the last hour or two. So the system takes a little bit longer to slog through processing those applications. You may not get your ERA Commons auto email with your error messages until after the deadline. A problem you can fix by submitting a few days early and giving yourself the peace of mind that it's in an error free. That's harping a lot on this, but these are, quote, relatively simple things you can do to save yourself a lot of heartache. And in our Mayor's group always targets two days before. I've had folks who submitted, and the system's open 30 days before. Now, we don't see anybody applying 30 days before, but you could, and be free and clear to pursue other interests while you wait. I mentioned this earlier, but I want to mention this, bring it up here. On the front page of the SF424 governmental blah blah form, it asks, is your business a WSOB or an SDB? And a WSOB is a women-owned small business, and an SDB is a socially and economically disadvantaged small business. We get a lot of questions, and we actually find companies don't know what they are, and they actually check these boxes differently from application to application, which is very confusing for us. This information, whether you're a women-owned business or a socially economically disadvantaged business, is used for tracking purposes only. It's not used in peer review. It's not used in funding decisions. It gives you neither an advantage nor a disadvantage. We have to report to SBA at the end of the year how many women-owned applications did we get, how many women-owned small business awards did we make, and we also target our outreach, so we know, can we bring in some new women-owned businesses, minority-owned businesses, and the like. It's used for tracking purposes only. I know folks tend to get worried when they're asked about this type of information on the face page. It's not required that you check it. We ask that you check it if it's you, and we ask that you check it consistently from one application to the next, unless your status does truly change. So women-owned businesses, and women-owned business is an SBA designation. Quite simply, it's 51% owned and controlled by women, one or more women. And you self-certify on the form when you check the box that you're a WSOB, and this website takes you to the SBA website on women-owned small businesses. Socially and economically disadvantaged used to be called minority-owned, and so this is the current term of art. I'm not sure this is more clear or less clear. It's certainly confusing to a lot of folks. but 51% owned and controlled by one or more disadvantaged persons, which encompasses a lot of different types of areas. And you have to self-certify at SAM that you're a SDB company. And this website takes you to SBA's definition on all these things. And so I would ask that if you are, and you can be both, you can be a women-owned socially economically disadvantaged business, please just take a look and check the boxes if this what kind of company you are. It just helps us to know where we stand and how we're doing and how we can do further outreach to encourage participation in the program. So, peer review. I could spend, not me, I would get CSR to come and spend half a day or a day talking about peer review, but you're going to get 2 slides because this is an overall talk. But in general, SBIR, STTR uses the same peer review process we use at NIH for all of our other programs. We have separate small business panels, so you're not competing in R01 panels or academic panels. It's a mix of expertise between business and academia. But and the process is kind of the same. You apply, it goes to the Center for Scientific Review for assignment to a study section and to an institute for funding. The review group meets, study section happens, you're clicking refresh in ERA Commons, waiting to see the score to arrive. And then the second the score arrives, you call your program officer who says, you got to wait till the summary statement comes out before you talk to me because I can't talk too much without a summary statement. It goes to a second level of review called Advisory Council. This is a little bit of nuance to the NIH. It's part of the reason we take a little bit longer. NIH has regulations that stipulate we have a 2-tiered peer review process. First level is peer review, what most folks are familiar with. Second level is Advisory Council. Each of the 27 institutes has an Advisory Council that does a second level administrative review of applications. They don't re-review it. They don't do peer review. They look at other types of things. Most of that just goes through there. Program officers, institute staff need funding plans. Ultimately, institute directors sign off on them. You get a happy note, hopefully from your program officer or grants management specialist, telling you to get ready and give us a lot of information. We make the award and you off and running and doing the work. It uses the same review criteria for the rest of our program. We read those. We read them. And I have folks, so we read them very carefully and are interested in what's going on in your grant. We write a lot of reports, and we work across NIH, and we go to council and review meetings. And they also occasionally get to think about science and go to meetings and do a little bit of things for which they earn their degree. And so they do all of these things, and these are really your number one person to work with at NIH. And so as I close, some gap funding programs. I alluded to this earlier. This is our fast track program. Combination phase 1 and 2. You write them together, they get reviewed together. If it does well, we make a phase 1 award. You do the phase 1, you send your final progress report to your program officer. It's already been peer reviewed. They make a staff decision, and then they give you the phase 2 within a few weeks to a month after the end of your phase 1. They're harder to get. You're going to need to have preliminary data to be convincing, and you saw the success rates are around phase 1. Direct phase 2. So who's heard of direct phase 2? This is one of the new provisions in the reauthorization. So like with the government, I lied a little bit in the beginning when I said you have to have a phase 1 to get a phase 2. Well, you can skip the phase 1 depending, and this is the direct phase 2. So this allows a small business that's ready for the phase 2 to apply right for it if they've already done the phase 1 equivalent. If you've got company resources from elsewhere, from anything other than a phase 1 award, you've done essentially the phase 1 work, you can apply for a direct phase 2. That's what we call it. This PAR 14088 listed on our website is essentially the parent direct phase 2. Not every institute's on it. Around 21 or 22 of our 24 are on it. Some of the smaller institutes who don't have the budget to support it are on it. But essentially, we will accept most anything on it in our mission. But you want to talk to a program officer. I have some preliminary data. Should I do a fast track or direct phase 2? Call a program officer. This program is new. The first available funding is fiscal 15, so I don't know the success rates yet on it. I'll have that information next year. Question in the back.
And the limit on the phase 2 is the same, is that right?
So by all rights and everything, it's a phase 2. 1 million guideline, $1.5 million cap, 2 years, 50% can be subcontracted out. All of that is essentially just the same phase 2 rules apply for SBIR. I talked about phase 2B earlier. I'm not going to spend too much time on this slide. It's the second phase 2. Many, but not all of our institutes do it because of the budgetary limitations and the size of their programs. Call a program officer. If you've got a phase 2 award, call your program officer and say, hey, I heard this thing about phase 2B or the second phase 2. What's that about? And they'll let you know about it if they offer it and how you can apply. And lastly, transitioning to the marketplace. We have programs that we offer to awardee small businesses that help teach you about the B in SBIR business. We have these programs are called the Niche Assessment Program for our Phase 1 winners and Commercialization Assistance Program, or CAP, for our Phase 2 winners. The Niche Program is essentially, you were put in for that, and our vendor, Foresight Science and Technology, develops with some of your input a market niche analysis called the Technology Niche Assessment. It helps you, and this is a market report that you and only you receive. It's for your use. It typically helps you prepare a Phase 2 application, and it will help identify other uses, other markets for your technology that can be very helpful in developing Phase 2. Our CAP program is run through LARDA Inc., and this is a hands-on 8 to 9 month training program that is provided free of charge to the companies who we have 80 or so slots a year, and most companies can get in who need it. But it's provided free of charge. You get a principal advisor who helps you specifically on things you need for your company, for your situation. It's not a cookie-cutter program. It can help you in any and all of these areas, whatever you need at the time. And we have different tracks of that program for basic companies, for advanced companies, for companies that need to go on the regulatory path. For the FDA, it's a 3-track program currently. And these are available to you as awardees. That's basically it. We put on a large training program conference once a year. We move it around the country so that different folks don't have to travel as far. This year it will be in Seattle at the end of October, and we will have the website opening in May. It'll be a 3-day conference. You'll hear, there'll be sessions on NIH. You'll see this talk in the beginning. We'll have keynote speakers. You'll get an hour we're trying to do. We're all public servants. We're all trying to make everyone healthier, live longer. If they get sick, get better, prevent from getting sick. All the kinds of things that are very altruistic, but you have to understand that when you're applying to us. You have to read. And you have to read a lot of information, and I know it's a lot. I know the solicitations are a little wordy. I know the application instructions are 200 pages long. I know that we have an annotated set of forms that are very helpful. We can, all of that information, and our website has a lot of information. We can do everything for you but write your research plan with all of the guidance we have out there. And so it does take time to do this well. Give yourself plenty of time. It doesn't take, people do it, and it doesn't take a few weeks to put together a good application. It takes months. You need to give yourself plenty of time. You can talk with us. We are an incredibly open agency. You don't find that in many places across the government, perhaps most. You can pick up the phone. You can email me, my staff, program officers at the institutes, grants management specialists and officers, and you will get a call back or an email, perhaps quicker than you might think. In fact, the number on the sheet is my number under the general office. Comes right to my office and my phone. Doesn't go to a secretary and assistant. So talking with us before you apply, when you apply, during you apply, after, you can always call us. You may get sent to the right person if it's a certain stage of the review, like to the SRO or something, but you can always call us. There's no blackout period when you're talking about NIH and grants. If you're applying for SBIR contracts, you can't really talk to anyone besides the contracting officer, but that's just a smaller volume of our awards. And so just talk with us about anything, about your idea, about your review, SBIR, STTR. I don't know if I'm NIH, I don't know if I should go to NCI or NHLBI or aging. We're happy to talk about anything, and my office is happy to talk. We will typically give you some general information and pass you on to one of the institutes where you're going to get very specific advice for your situation. And the most important piece of advice, I'm going to expand upon this in a minute, is make that develop that relationship with the program officer. Those folks in the center aisle, the center column of that sheet I gave you, they're the leads. So they may be your program officer, or they may refer you to someone within their institute. But especially SBIR program officers are very passionate about the program and very vested in making sure your company can succeed, and will do everything in their power to do it. Not that your R01 program officer won't, of course they will, but SBIR is just a special group of people who really want to help you out. So you want to develop that relationship and submit early. And early means days, a week, if you're really ambitious. Not hours, and certainly not minutes. You can save yourself a lot of heartburn and not waiting for 4 months. Because of course we have to make sure everybody's treated fairly. If there's a legitimate system issue, like SAN goes down, or grants.gov goes out, or there's a natural disaster, or the PI is sick, or the immediate family member is sick, we have policies to handle those types of situations. But starting late is not a sufficient excuse. The program officers are everywhere. We have them in our solicitations, we have them on our site. This is my office's email address. It looks like it's going to go into the abyss, but I will show you the people and the pictures of the folks that goes to. That goes to 6 people on my immediate team, just so we can manage email into that box. 3 out of 6 of us are on outreach this week. So this is why it's important. But I want to tell you a little bit as I come to the close here about program officers. So NIH, the extramural team at NIH, extramural is 80% of our money. So you've got program officers, peer review staff, SROs, and grants management staff. And they work together very closely to manage your award. So program office staff, they're also called program administrators, program directors, program officers, program officials, program managers. All the same word for the same type of person. They're responsible for the programmatic, scientific, technical aspects of your grant. They're your number one friend and your number one advocate. When your program officer has 2 applications with identical scores, with identical merit, and money to pay 1, you want to make sure you have a relationship with that program officer so they remember that I talked to so-and-so and I'm really interested in that grant. Maybe that tips the balance. So you want to develop that relationship. These are all the things they do, and this is just some of them. And so I was a program officer myself prior to my current job running the program. I was at NIGMS for 5 years. I managed the SBIR program. I managed R01s. I managed F32 postdoc fellowships. I did all of this. I wrote solicitations. I did program analysis to find the gaps. I spent a lot of time on the phone with applicants and grantees. I worked across NIH. I handled a couple of contracts. I monitored your Type 5s. Your non-competing continuation progress reports. How many of you think nobody